Yasmani Grandal chose the Chicago White Sox in the fall of 2019. It was a huge 4-year contract, and the White Sox were getting an all-star catcher with switch hitting power. That was an exciting moment. And aside for perhaps 30 games in 2021, the Yasmani Grandal tenure has been hampered by injuries and power outages. Grandal has said all the right things about this coming off season, but can he really deliver in 2023?
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Today's episode is sponsored by Simply Safe Home Security with Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe. 24/7 monitoring agents capture evidence to accurately verify a threat for faster police response. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb to learn more. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk off-season White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Yasmani Grandal needs to get healthy and find a way to stay healthy, but I have a feeling most fans have already moved on. The Philadelphia Phillies are moving on as they advance to their first World Series in 13 years. Also, rumors galore about the White Sox managerial search. Oh, to be a fly on the wall for Ozzie Guillen's interview. Hey, the 2022 White Sox were 81-81, if you needed to be reminded, which I'm sure you don't. Second place in the AL Central, finished 11 games back of the Cleveland Guardians. How about those Philadelphia Phillies? Bryce Harper and company advanced to the World Series, their first trip since 2009. Phillies are a feel-good story. I honestly am envious of how their team has been formed over the last few years and what they've accomplished so far. They are fun to watch. All after firing Joe Girardi earlier in the season because the team was underperforming and needed a new direction. Imagine that. Speaking of new directions, it is White Sox managerial search 2022. Never a dull moment following all the twists and turns and rumors. And it was crazy on social media this past Friday. According to Mike Rodriguez, I don't know if you saw this. I saw this on Twitter. This was from Mike Rodriguez's account. He had said Joe Espada, Astros bench coach, will be the next manager of the Chicago White Sox. Mike Rodriguez, an MLB insider, broadcaster, and former analyst for the Chicago Cubs in Spanish. Lots of different social media accounts falling all over themselves to either claim that this was true. Hey, we've got inside information. This is not true. Confirming, denying, back and forth what Mike Rodriguez had reported. Crazy afternoon on Friday. Of course, Houston looking to advance to the World Series. So an announcement regarding Espada would most likely have to wait until the end of the World Series. Now, if the Houston Astros win and Dusty Baker rides off into the sunset, I would assume that Houston would, love to hire Espada as the replacement. I did a quick check with the hosts from Locked On Astros to see what they were thinking, and I got the impression that Houston fans would be very upset to see Espada go, especially since Dusty Baker's time is most likely limited. A name that is off the board, an odds maker favorite a few weeks ago to become the next White Sox manager, Bruce Bochy, has found a new home. He was named the new manager of the Texas Rangers. Nothing wrong with Bochy. He's a winner, only a few years removed from managing with the San Francisco Giants. I would not have been surprised if he was named the next White Sox manager, but I am glad the Sox chose to go in a different direction. What direction that is, we still do not know. During all of this Joe Espada excitement on Friday, there was an article from Michael Allardyce of NBC Sports Chicago that created a bunch of buzz. According to sources, the Chicago White Sox have had discussions with Ozzie Guillen and will interview him for their vacant managerial role this week. As for Guillen's stance, he, of course, has expressed interest in having the conversation. Quote, "It is not in my plans. I don't know if it's in the White Sox plans. Even if they think I can help them for next year, I'm very open to listening to it," end quote. But Guillen, of course, agrees with fans calling for his return. Remember that quote just, towards the end of the season. Guillen said, quote, "Let me be cocky. Nobody in baseball knows this ball club better than Ozzie Guillen," end quote. Speaking of fans, we found out this past Friday that for the third year in a row, there will be no Sox Fest in late January. Chicago White Sox issued a statement saying, due to several factors, Sox Fest 2023 will not be held this January. We recognize our fans may be disappointed. The event will not take place. Please check back throughout the 2023 baseball season for updates regarding future plans. So, several factors. What could that be? Maybe basically Jerry Reinsdorf saying, "You chanted fire Tony and held up signs that said sell the team. So I am denying you the opportunity to gather as one to celebrate the team you love and the impending arrival of spring training, no matter how much money you want to spend." It is a horrible look for the organization, especially since the Cubs are having their fan fest this winter. So is that, because the White Sox had this embarrassing season, they underperformed ridiculously, and Sox brass, the front office, just do not want to answer to frustrated fans. If you haven't been to Sox Fest, there's always this question and answer portion, a town hall, so to speak, where you can get up and you can fire off questions. And usually Rick Hahn is right there as other members of the organization. Remove that portion. If you don't have the stomach to answer the questions that these fans have, and they have the right to have them, just do away with the Q&A. But still, let fans get together for this festival. It is a reminder, once again, folks, that we are just living in Jerry's world. And, this is all we can't do anything about it. It is Jerry Reinsdorf's world. We're living in it. And I feel like sometimes we should just be grateful that we still have a team on the South Side to root for. It's really absolutely pathetic. The last Sox Fest was in 2020. It was an exciting event because the Sox just signed a free agent, Yasmani Grandal, a few months prior. That feels like an eternity ago. The White Sox gave Yasmani Grandal the richest contract in franchise history. I'm going to tell you why it was justified at the time, but also why his tenure has not lived up to the money. More on that in a moment. As everyone knows, athletes rise and fall in the ranks, but when it comes to saving money, Simply Safe always stays on top. And right now, you can save big with Simply Safe Home Security. They're giving listeners 40% off their advanced security system, Simply Safe was just named the best home security of 2022 by U.S. News. With 24/7 professional monitoring, when a threat is detected, Simply Safe's monitoring professionals promptly contact you and dispatch first responders to your home, even if you're away or unable to respond. 24/7 professional monitoring costs under $1 a day. That's less than half the cost of ADT's traditional professional installed plans. Simply Safe blankets your home with protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats in your home. Our monitoring experts use response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you get the highest priority police dispatch. Don't miss this chance to save big when you protect your home with the best. Get 40% off your order when you visit simplysafe.com/lockedonMLB today. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes. That's simplysafe.com/URL. Go today. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Yasmani Grandal. Boy, I feel like I've been pretty optimistic about players that had a down year in 2022, that they would bounce back in 2023. I really do not feel that way with Grandal. I think his best days are well behind him, but boy, do I hope I am wrong. Grandal, of course, signed with the White Sox in the fall of 2019. It was a 4-year, $73 million deal. It was the largest contract the White Sox have ever given out. Remember, the Sox are one of just a few teams in all of baseball that have never given out a $100 million deal. In 2023, Grandal will earn $18.2 million. At the time, I couldn't have been more excited. The White Sox were paying premium money for premium talent. Baseball insiders picked the Sox as a likely landing spot. It was a good fit, and it actually happened. That never happens with the White Sox. During the 2019 season, this leading up to Grandal's free agency, he was a 30-year-old all-star catcher for the Milwaukee Brewers. He even earned a few MVP votes that season. In 2019, he played in 153 games. Can you believe that? 153. He slashed 246, 380, 468. He hit 28 home runs, had 77 RBIs, and walked 109 times. It is no wonder he was so coveted. Sadly, we really haven't seen anything quite close to those numbers, and I really wish the White Sox could find some way to end the Grandal era. As is the case with Sox Fest, there are several factors as to why that is just not going to happen. Grandal played in 46 of 60 games in 2020, but did not make it to 100 games in 2021 or this past season, 2022. Now, during the second half of 2021, Grandal was indeed a force. In 30 games, he slashed 337, 481, 673. He hit 6 doubles, 9 home runs, and walked 27 times, again, in only 30 games. He had finally arrived. He got his legs healthy and was driving the ball all over the ballpark. It was fun to see the White Sox be successful because of Yasmani Grandal. But Grandal has been plagued by knee and leg problems during his time with the White Sox. During this past offseason, he had a procedure done on his knee, and it seemed to be, a workload management thing for much of the beginning of the season. Tough to get going if you just can't stay on the field. Continuous problems with your legs and specifically knees is extremely concerning if you are an MLB catcher. White Sox tried to fit him in as a designated hitter and first base. Grandal wanted to get his swing going, but just could not catch multiple games in a row until seemingly September. Before the season started, BetOnline set the betting lines for Grandal's total home runs and RBIs. The over-under for home runs was 25 and a half for the 2022 season, and RBIs at 75 and a half. He did not come anywhere close to those numbers. It was really a pathetic season for Grandal. In 2022, in 99 games, he slashed 202, 301, 269. He hit 5 home runs and had 27 RBIs and only walked 45 times. Grandal was supposed to be a definite upgrade defensively as well. He was a master at framing pitches, getting his pitcher extra strikes whenever possible. Look, watching him behind the plate in 2022 was uninspiring and definitely did not impress me. Pass balls, errors, and not a real threat to throw out a potential base stealer. Now, again, I'm not big on giving out letter grades and on player performances. However, if I was giving letter grades out, I think I'd have to go with a D, F for Grandal. Again, it was not a bad signing at the time. Amazing numbers during that 2019 season. Sox went after premium talent and offered premium money. Here was a guy who was going to help offensively and also help out a young pitching staff. Grandal seems to have a plan in place in terms of what he wants to do to get better for 2023. Time is not on Grandal's side, and his legs have been a constant issue. I'm going to tell you why 2023 does not necessarily promise to be different for Yasmani Grandal. More on that in a moment. In an October 1st article by James Fegan of The Athletic, Grandal talked about the work needed to be done this offseason. He said, quote, "I'll invite you guys to come see my workout. I'll be in Chicago. I know it's going to be cold, but quite frankly, I have a really good idea of what it is I'm going to do," end quote. And then speaking about the 2022 White Sox season, Grandal said, quote, "We've met a few times as a team without coaches. We kind of all came into agreement that what we needed to do, we needed to do something about it. It might have been a little bit too late, but not really. I think we were in the hunt for a while there, seeing everything that happened in the first half and still being able to be in the hunt for a playoff spot. It kind of tells you exactly the talent that we have and what it is we can do," end quote. However, he also said, quote, "Plain and simple, we just sucked. Anything else would be an excuse. And the last thing you want to make as a team, as an individual, is an excuse. It's also like a slap in the face. If you don't take this year seriously, it's going to come back to bite us the next year again. Hopefully, we get everything straightened out and come back next year and give it a shot," end quote. Yasmani Grandal will turn 34 in the offseason and is entering his final year of that 4-year, $73 million contract. The Sox obviously will not dump that contract, and I don't see a team looking to take that money on in terms of a trade, not how his knees have limited his ability. The knee problems affected his power and most likely his defense too. Hopefully, he follows through with this offseason plan of his. He can get himself healthy and put the work in to stay healthy for 2023. Aside from that 30-game stretch in 2021 after the All-Star break, I have not been blown away at all. Simply drawing walks and framing pitches doesn't do it for me. I have no idea what to expect from Grandal in 2023, but honestly, I don't expect much at all. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We are on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTV. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I will dive a little deeper into individual player performances like Tim Anderson and continue to look at off-season options. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.